Hi YouTube, Big Apple here again today to talk to you about a reloading question I hear sometimes. And I'll give you the process that I go through, the materials I use in cleaning my cases. So, just to give you a little side-by-side, there's 223. You can see dirty case on the right, clean one on the left. So how do I get it to this step right here? Well, I'll go into a lot of detail in this video and I'll explain to you the different types of tumblers and why I use the one I use. So, cleaning your cases, is it necessary for reloading just in general? I probably would, because eventually your dies, the things that you actually run the cases through, are going to get super dirty and they're going to get gunky and they'll probably, stop working as well, or, your cases are just, it's good to have them clean for every batch, and I load them clean all the time. It also keeps your hands clean, keeps the area clean, keeps your ammo smooth too, because you don't have all these rough edges on the outside of the case. If you see all those little scratches there, those little surface scratches, that's from this falling on concrete and stuff. So it's good to tumble your cases. How do I do it? Well, I use a Thumbler's tumbler with stainless media, and that's it sitting right there. That's the actual tumbler. But I'm going to show you all the parts that I use at the end of this. First, I'm going to tell you about the other methods of cleaning. So you also have vibratory tumblers. This is a dry method. I'll roll in a picture of a dry tumbler right here. You'll see it just looks like any regular canister, and basically you flip a switch and it vibrates at a certain frequency, and the vibrating of that media up against the cases actually polishes them. So different types of media. It uses corn cob or walnut media, so like little ground up corn cob or walnut pieces is what it uses. The media, so the downsides of this really, the media must be replaced because it gets dirty. So all the dirt from that stuff, as you see right here, dirt and contaminants stay in the media as you use it. So the media just continually gets worse until you have to replace it. And you can buy it in a big jug, but eventually you're gonna have to replace it. Then case polish must be added. So after a while, when you start using this same media, the media is going to stop cleaning as well, and you're going to see the cases are going to go in there dirty and they're going to stay there dirty, or you're going to end up running them for about 8 or 9 hours because the runtime is long depending on how good your media is. So when your media starts to get super dirty and it loses that ability to clean and polish those cases, well, then your media is worthless. It's just a bunch of dirty corn cob and walnut pieces basically. Loads are limited in size too, because you can only fit as much as you can fill in there, and if you overfill it, then it won't have enough room to vibrate. If you have too many cases, not enough media, too much media, too many cases, any variation, the load sizes probably range from about maybe 100 to 150 rounds of 9mm ish, maybe 100 rounds of 223 if you have a big enough one. But vibratory tumblers, the appeal of them is that relatively cheap startup costs. I mean, compared to what I have here, I know the higher end vibratory tumblers probably run pretty expensive, but for the most part, it's just not that great. So then I have a regular tumbler, which is also a dry method. It's pretty much the same as vibratory, and loads can be much larger. What I mean by this is, that's if you use regular dry media in a tumbler like this. They call it a tumbler because it rotates, but I'll show you some up close pictures later in the video. Your loads can be larger, so that's the one aspect that this has over a vibratory case tumbler. It's still a dry method, meaning there's no liquids involved. It's just corn cob or walnut or any other variation, and you just put it in there and it rotates around. So it does a little better job than the vibratory, but it still has limitations. Also, you've probably heard of Hornady's ultrasonic cleaners, and it is a wet method, so it does actually, the cases actually do sit in a bath. I guess the upsides to this will be that you probably get them a little bit cleaner than you would in dry media tumbling, and you don't have to wipe off a bunch of little powdery residue and stuff like you do off of dry media cases. After they run, if you run in walnut, eventually you're going to have to wipe off every case to make them look good, and they're not all going to look like that. So now the other parts about it. So it uses a solution in a bath and uses ultrasonic waves to loosen carbon and dirt. So it sits under there. It has some sort of little module right in the middle that pulsates into this bath. The downsides, cases must be moved around to ensure uniform cleaning, because it only has one spot that those waves actually come from, and of course they're going to be more intense in the middle than they will out on the sides. cases are not polished as they sit in the bath, so they're not actually moving. They're just sitting in that bath, and the water waves and stuff, the waves are traveling in the solution in the water, and whatever solution that Hornady uses to break up that stuff. It's not actually polishing the cases. So if your cases go in there super duper scratched, kind of like this one, then they're going to come out looking like that. They'll be a little cleaner, but they're going to come out looking like that. I forget to mention too, ultrasonic cleaners do clean the insides of cases too, but then again, at what cost? So machine gets really, really hot, and it must cool between cycles, and they need to be cool before you stick your hand in there or you'll burn yourself as you're removing cases. Cleaning solution must be purchased, which I would assume probably needs to be replaced over time. And loads are very size limited because they're limited by the amount that you can fit in there. And this, if you notice, the ultrasonic cleaners are a lot smaller. They're really good for cleaning pistol parts. If you have a lot of deep carbon buildup inside your slides and stuff like that, you can just submerge it in there and then take it out and draw up all the pieces. But that's about their only appeal, to me at least. So the other method is stainless steel tumbling with Tumbler's Tumbler. It is a wet method, easily the best method for tumbling cases, especially in bulk, if you load in bulk. If you're a competition shooter, this to me is easily the best. So I'll go through the cons first, and when I start going through the pros, I'll show you what this thing looks like. So the cons, initial cost, it's about $200 to $300 depending on where you get it, with all this stuff included. It is a wet method, so you do have to let the cases dry after you run them. Usually I'll dump them out on a beach towel, swish them around a little bit, wipe them off, and let them sit for a day. If you don't, then when you put your primers or your powder in, it'll get that stuff wet, and then the rounds won't fire. The initial cost of media, because that's the little stainless steel pellets, it is a one-time purchase unless you lose them. The soap and the other part must be replaced, but you use very little, so I'm going to talk about that after. And do not let a steel case slip into your batch, because if it does, it'll pour rust on a lot of the other brass components. I actually forgot to grab one piece of this. So don't let a piece of steel a steel case slip in there, or it will rust, and it will put a lot of corrosion on your brass cases. I accidentally let that happen one time and didn't turn out too well for me. Although I was still able to use the brass, it just looked awful. So pros. Well, it cleans the insides and the outsides of the cases uniformly, and the primer pockets. It polishes them. They can be put in the tumbler dirty because it's a wet method. They come out looking brand new. You don't necessarily need 5 pounds of media, because that's what it's recommended by stainlesstumblingmedia.com. I use 3 pounds and it's plenty. Loads can be large. Runtime is only 4 to 5 hours no matter how dirty the cases are, and I use a timer to set that. Cleaning is consistent throughout the batch. It removes annealing on cases. Rogue media can be picked up with a magnet, and it's a one-time purchase. Once you go stainless, you never go back. I know it's a ridiculous quote, but whatever. I thought it fit with this. So now I'll just show you all the parts and how I do this. So here's your stainless tumbler. You can see here you got a nice rubber gasket sealing this off. And when you put the lid on, you tighten it down. You can see a little bit of brass shavings there. That just happens over time. It removes microns of brass off of the cases. I've probably run some cases like, I don't know, 10 or 11 times, 12 times. I don't keep track of how many times I fire my pistol cases. That's how little brass it takes off. I've never had one mess up before. So you basically just bolt this down. It has some holes here. You put some wing nuts on these guys, or it may come with little knobs. And then that's it. You set it on this little platform that they have. It's got two big rollers on either end. And these two ends of the tumbler here and here just spin. So this whole thing just spins around, and these flat surfaces work to polish the cases. So uses these little stainless steel pellets here, and I don't know what it is about the mixture of materials that they use, but it actually doesn't harm the cases at all. They suggest you use a drop of Dawn dish soap, so that does some sort of weird chemistry thing with the water. And then they suggest you use this stuff, which can be found at Walmart. It's a water softener for dishwashers and stuff. But what it does in here is it does also soften the water, but the active ingredient in this that works with the cases is citric acid. And citric acid completely removes all tarnish from brass without actually harming the brass. So for whatever reason, that little combination works. Just like a teaspoon of this stuff, a little bit of Dawn to get it soapy, and you let it run for 4 to 5 hours. And I'll show you some before and afters here. So This is what a 40 case looked like after I had shot at the range this past weekend. I don't know if you can see how dirty this thing is, but it's got dirt on it. It's just chopped up. You can see some scratches on the surface. You can just tell that this has been beat up. So here's one after running through my stainless tumbler. You can see how clean the inside is. I mean, it just looks like a brand new case. You can see the primer pocket is also completely spotless. I mean, this thing just runs really, really well, really well. So the same is true for stainless, not stainless, for nickel-plated brass too. There's an original one, all tarnished up, all beat up, scratched, etc. And here's one that's been run through it. You can just see how awesomely shiny that is and how consistent this thing is in cleaning the entire case. It's a very efficient method. Same thing for 5.56 cases. You can see how beat up this thing is. It's got some annealing on the end. I deprime my brass before I run it so it cleans the primer pockets also. But this is also a 5.56 piece of brass. No more annealing, no more deep scratches. Really, really clean primer pocket. That's what it does. And how do I dump out my media? I use this little strainer combination. I got it at a grocery store. You need to make sure you have a strainer thin enough that'll catch the little stainless steel pellets. I'm not sure of the exact diameter. If you go to stainlesstumblingmedia.com, they'll tell you. But what I do is I'll dump it all in here, or I'll pour the water out and then I'll take a handful out of cases and dump them in here and run them underwater as I make sure I shake everything out. So if that's just sitting in there like that, what I would do is have water running and I would just let it kind of drip through there and shake it, make sure I get the media out, and then toss it in the bottom. And so then whenever I'm done, all my media is stuck in here. I can dump that back in the tumbler. And all my clean cases are in here and I can go and dump those out. And like I said, I dump these out on a beach towel and just kind of swish them around and make sure I get a lot of the water off the surface. But luckily this makes sure that there aren't any water spots on the cases. So it does a really good job. If you need a substitute for this and you can't find it, you can actually use lemon juice because it has citric acid, but then again, it's not as efficient and you'll see a lot of water spots on your cases. So all these things I said right here, that's it. There's the full extent of my stainless tumbling method that I really like. Once I started doing this, I just saw how dumb vibratory tumblers were. So it is expensive startup charge, but if you're gonna be doing a lot of reloading, this is the most efficient way. You can fit in a large batch and they always come out looking like this. Unless you just put way too much in there and the stainless media isn't able to get around those cases, you're gonna be good to go. I can fit probably 300 to 400 9mm cases in this thing, run it for 4 or 5 hours, and after I come back when my timer goes off, I open it up and they're just all shiny in there. So anyway, if this was too exhaustive for you, sorry for it being a little long, but this process needs an explanation and I need to show you that I've used it for 2 years and that, you know, I've put a lot of work into this. So anyway, this is Big Apple signing out. Thanks for watching.